know, we got a lot to get into like we do every week. So if you're ready, here we go, because we're bringing out a big name out of the gate. And that first name is a guy who in Hollywood, yeah, you know him from a few things. But he allowed his little Goodfellas persona to come out a little bit on Tuesday when he was outside the New York City courtroom where 45's Hushmoney trial was going on. Robert De Niro was quoted outside the court as saying this: "This is the time to stop him," referring to 45, "by voting him out once and for all. We don't want to wake up after the election saying, 'What, again? My God, what the hell have we done?'" De Niro recently did a commercial, by the way, in support of the current president, was using the media coverage in front of the court to push the message for the Democrats. Now, on one level, it's a great way to get your message out there. You know the media has been swarming all over the New York court to get, the attention of what's going on. So De Niro takes advantage of that, being that he happens to live in New York City. So it's asking an interesting question. For De Niro, is this a concerned citizen? Is this a career fail? Now, if I'm going to think a career fails, I'll bring up 4 movies right away that's a career fail. But we won't do that out of respect for the man who's done The Godfather, who has done Goodfellas, and Casino, a lot of great movies. But we'll separate the actor from the human being right now. Annabelle, I know you're shuffling. I know that look. You're looking down. You're making sure nothing gets sloppied anywhere.
I love that sloppy shuffle. You know that. So I did talk about this on my live, and I have a feeling that this is not really a great look for him. Let's put it that way. And to be sure, I'm Italian. I am a De Niro fan. You guys know that. I'm mostly Italian. Let's put it that way. So
and the funny thing is, you're saying it wasn't a great look, and yet I watched the video. I mean, he seemed very composed and in control when he was giving the message that he was giving. But whether or not the message is going to fall on deaf ears or whether or not it's going to paint him in a different light is where we're concentrating on right now.
So absolutely, he was composed. He looked good. He did have the speech written down, though. So
Yes,
that tells me that this is a contrived effort that, intellectually, not psychically, tells me it was a contrived effort instead of a heartfelt effort. I'm one of those people. I was a big Matt Damon fan, and I found myself saying, shut up and act for a long time with him. I just want my actors to stay acting. I don't want to know their politics. I don't want to know my musicians' politics either. I want you to perform, monkey perform. I just want them to do what they do. I know. Isn't that terrible? I'm such an elitist, right?
Yeah, but based on that theory, then you're not allowed to make tequila like Sammy Hagar does.
Oh, no,
like
I didn't
George
say that.
Clooney
Make
does.
all the tequila you want.
Oh,
you can
okay.
make all
As
the
long as
tequila
we got
you
the
want.
boundary set. There you go. Thank you.
I think when we get into the realm of thought management or architecture or thought architecture, when you already have an influential position, I think we get into some very dangerous territory. If you want to be a politician, be a politician. Don't be a puppet of a politician, a marketing puppet. That's just my feeling about it. If you want to promote products, so be it. That's a paid performance. Do we know that this is a paid performance or not? So I'm going to pull up my cards. Yeah. See what I'm saying? See where I'm going with this one? So I'm going to pull up some cards now. So I do think that there's going to be a lot of judgment on this from the powers that be. The Hierophant for me always winds up being the powers that be. So seats of power, Hollywood, the Kremlin, Washington, D.C., your PTA, your Board of Education, if you're talking about schools and things like that. I think that Hollywood is going to say, oh, good on you, fella. Good on you. This is great. We're so glad you're speaking out. We're going to talk a little bit later in Quick Hits about Lady Gaga, too, because Lady Gaga is another one who has a lot to say about politics. She was at the inauguration for Joe Biden, and she has a lot to say about this particular election as well. I think the powers that be are in full support of him. However, this is a 0 Fs kind of feeling. He's just not going to care. But the reality is, where does the bread and butter come from? The bread and butter comes from the public. He really rolled the dice on whether there was a majority rule in favor of 45 going to jail, being convicted of this. He really rolled the dice. Now, something very interesting came out last night. Kevin Costner actually had offered him a role and was giving him about $30 million for that role. And he has pulled that role back overnight. So that role has been taken away from him. So he is losing work. And that's our Queen of Swords here. That Wheel of Fortune, when it flips over, now we're talking about bad stuff a coming. Did he jump off the cliff here like our fool with all good intent? Yeah, I think he did. I think there was a good portion of his belief system that's behind this. I don't think he's paid for play. I don't think he's secretly a 45 lover and he just said, well, give me the money and I'll go out there and say a bunch of things. I think he believes some of this, but I also think that there was some influence from seats of power for him to do this. Unfortunately, when we get that 10 of Swords in reverse, this is like, yeah, man, you're not coming back. And again, this breaks my heart because I do love his career work, from Meet the Fockers to The Godfather, which I just watched for the first time, being a bad Italian. Goodfellas is one of my favorite movies. I love that movie. This is a disappointment. I'm a little bit sad that he is doubling down. I know he's very vocal during the last election. I'm a little bit sad that he's being super vocal about it. We don't need anybody stoking any fires. We don't need anybody adding to the flame that is our political system in the United States right now. But that is how I feel, and that is what my cards are saying here. So I defer to one of my fellow psychics here. Anybody else want to fire off?
Well, I'm sure Thor's got some kind of chart on this about De Niro. Come on now, Thor.
I do. I have an astrology chart. I wanted to ask my fellow panelist. Now, I didn't watch the diatribe that De Niro gave, but what exactly was he saying? Was he saying that he wants 45 to end up in jail, or what was essentially the context? Do any of you? Did you guys watch it?
I'll take this to a degree. What was going on was when he was outside and he was delivering his speech, and yes, he had it, not necessarily written down as Annabelle says, but it was there on his phone. You could tell he was reading off of that, which is understandable. But the point he was trying to bring out is, yes, he is supporting Joe Biden. He is supporting the current president. He's even got a commercial that will be running for the next several months that has him and his voice expressing the support of the current president. But he was also bringing out the point of why you should not be voting for 45 in this situation. Again, I'll give you another bit of the quote that I said before. Quote, "We do not want to wake up after the election saying, what, again? My God, what the hell have we done?" So you can tell where he's at, where he stands. And yes, he was taking advantage of the fact that every major news outlet was in front of this courtroom. So you got an attentive audience.
And if I may, he also said if 45 gets in, we're never getting rid of him. That was something
he did say that. Yes, he did.
There's a little bit of fear mongering there.
He's implying that it's going to be. I see.
Yeah, and where you're going, Annabelle, that would be a whole different read for a whole different time, because there is, I will say this, I really believe there is a large chunk that believe that, and a large chunk that say, are you crazy? And it's getting close to that 50-50 range when you think about that question.
Well, I'll be more than happy to bring up the chart.
Please do.
To bring you the latest psychic breaking news here, let's go ahead and bring up the chart. All right. Now, when I look at Robert De Niro's chart, one of the things I wanted to bring up was the planetary timeline he's on. In Vedic astrology, we talk about planetary timelines, and he's on a timeline called K2 right now. It's right over here if we take a look at the chart. Mm-hmm. K2 is basically, it represents past lives. It represents dissolving influences. And it's in the 8th house, which I find kind of interesting when I look at the chart of Robert De Niro here. K2 can be like, for example, when I think of K2, it can be like nil effect, like making your statement, thinking that there's going to be this massive effect with your statement, and it not really having any impact whatsoever on the course of what's happening with the trial with 45. Right. Or even with national politics. With K2, there's a certain amount of illusion there. Like somebody can be a little bit under delusion, like they think they're more influential than they are. And I'm trying to be impartial about this, by the way. I love Robert De Niro's movies. I love Goodfellas. I love Give me some mob movies. I love watching those.
He's fantastic.
I
so
love that.
upsetting.
But yeah, I feel like there's nil effect. Also, with K2 in the what I want to bring up, K2 in the eighth house can represent things like propaganda. You brought up the fact that he was reading from a phone or reading from like a script.
Yes.
And the eighth house has to do with propaganda that's designed to influence people's perceptions. It's designed to influence people's consciousness. So, was he being told by some sort of, handler or higher power, hey, put out these statements, you're a big name, everyone knows you from Goodfellas. The chart would show, but I also want to put out there the chart also shows with K2 being involved that there's not a lot of influence there. It's kind of like a shot in the dark.
Well, allow me to spin back on you a little bit since you brought up propaganda in the charts. In part of his speech, he did talk about how propaganda was being influenced by his rise to power, that the propaganda machine brought other dictators into the rise of power. He was using that comparable. So is it possible that that could be the spin in another direction as far as that goes? Can you see that potentially in the chart?
Yeah, he's definitely trying to switch the narrative. So, and I think both political parties are going to be doing this. To be honest, I think the Republicans and the Democrats are both going to be spinning this narrative of, even from the Republican side, they're probably going to be saying, well, look at everything Biden is doing. He's going to be a dictator and I think they're both going to be pointing fingers at each other. So, yeah, but I think there's an old saying with propaganda. It's who gets the narrative out first wins, right? Because you're the first one to put out the allegation or the narrative and you have the most influence. So maybe De Niro's trying to get that narrative out from right out of the gate. Like, let's get the narrative that, this is a bad news. 45 is going to be a dictator, whatever the script is.
Well, what's interesting? Anytime we talk about American politics and I go to Rick Paul, who really doesn't have a horse in this race whatsoever, and I'm going to bet the over-under on the number of De Niro movies he's seen is 4. This ought to be good. Rick, what do you got?
Have we still got the spread there, Annabelle? Because I'm sat here and it's just like this thing just sort of going through my mind at the moment is just, it's brilliant. It's like Stars and Stripes, and we were speaking about wrestling promos before we came on air.
That's
right.
True.
Over here, when your guys come over here and they do the wrestling tours, they're quite surprised how vocal the English crowd is compared to the American crowd. Mm-hmm. So without swearing too much, when we was asked what my opinion was on what he's done, he effed up. He effed up. What he's basically done is he's overestimated his value and his sort of station in life. If self-importance was a cologne, he would drown in it because it's just coming across. And like you said, I have seen probably 3 or 4. I tend to watch people doing impressions of him and watching his reactions, which I find absolutely hysterical.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But as a political commentator, when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, mate, stay in your lane. Just stay in your lane. The people out there, and I've got this strange image going through my mind as well when you're talking about the script and things like that, of Scrooge McDuck, right, going along to the counting house to have a look where his finances are. And just maybe using another analogy from the wrestling, that controversy creates cash. So was he asleep when this offer came in to go out there and do this diatribe? Did he knock a pile of scripts to get off on the floor and he's picked them all up and there's this mixture that's come out and everybody's gone, we gave him a live microphone here. I think we screwed up here, and he's come out with whatever he's come out with, which for me makes no sense whatsoever. It's got
I have a question for you, Rick, if you don't mind me asking. Do you believe that Robert De Niro, does he believe what he's saying, or do you think that it was just a script he was given and he's just reading off whatever he's being told? I just wanted to know what your thought was on that.
100% with that somebody's sort of prodded him, poked him, whatever, and he's gone all lovey on us. If he was over here, darling, we would be stepping up on stage and we would be giving a rebuttal. And I just think that he's made a grave mistake there. And looking at the cards there, the cards back me up on this, that he's sort of gambled that his reputation and his standing in society is enough to turn people to have a look at it. When I'm looking at those cards there with all of those swords in that, now that I'm learning
a new spread, Rick, just so you know, I threw some new cards because I cleaned them up a little too quickly. Sorry about that.
Well, don't worry, but we were looking at the judgment card there, and that's the torchlight, isn't it? That's the hallelujah moment where we're in that spotlight, and we were talking about the Queen of Swords. Well, when the Queen of Swords comes in, she's the battle axe. She's going to sort of clear the pathways and things like that. Anything to do with the Three of Swords for me, whether it's in the upright or the reverse position, is all about heartbreak.
Yeah, we did get it again. That
his thoughts are going to cost him, like emotional support, or those people that are on the fence, if you like. And then we've got another reversal card there. So I'm looking at this and going, yes, he's been prompted and provoked and called to action, but he screwed up big style. This will cost him not only like votes for popularity, but also financially. And personally, as I'm sat there and I've explained my viewpoint, and you put this lovely there, that I have no particular interest, so I don't understand politics. So I throw my tennis ball out, and as it comes back in and I catch it, I'm just going like this. I just want to cover my eyes, because I think on reflection, when he looks back at all of this, he will realise to his detriment what an idiot he's made himself look at. I said in some of the earlier broadcasts about being the post turtle. Nobody quite knows how he got to where he is, but he's going to regret being up there, because as I was told recently, darlings, if you're going to put your head above the parapet, be prepared to be shot at. So he's in the brown stuff, and it's going to hit the whirly thing. That's my assessment of it, and that's where I'll leave it.
And I will take the last word on this, because not often I can actually do something. Leave the cards up there for me for a second there, Anna. I want to go back to I don't get to do this that often, so I'm going to try a spin. Bear with me. And Rick is excited about this. Yes. You bring up the Three of Swords. Please point that out to everybody one more time. We're talking about heartbreak and disappointment. Here's my spin on the heartbreak and disappointment. That the result of the election will not go the way De Niro and many want it to go.
Breaking news, breaking psychic news. Rob Acampora of the A Game with Rob Acampora is becoming psychic. Only just working with us, and he is becoming psychic.
So he's learning how to read those cards.
Become psychic too.
It was, like I said, I have one moment. Just mark it down, and if you're keeping score at home, that's one. But more importantly, I don't know what is scarier right now. The cologne Rick mentioned, the fact that we have De Niro as Scrooge McDuck, or I read the Three of Swords. You decide on that whole thing. And final word, knowing De Niro's politics and knowing where he stands, I really do believe he meant every word that he said. Yeah, it's probably more difficult for him to wing it off the cuff. So he had it in front of him just to get the words out. And to me, what he showed was control. Because De Niro is a guy, and Annabelle, you'll vouch for this, he can be a bit of a hothead. He can come across that way. So the fact that he showed so much restraint and control in front of the media, I think it painted him in a good light. But the end result, only time's going to tell. And that's where, over the next few months, I'm sure we're going to have more moments with more celebrities and more as we get closer to that election day.